Hey everybody, I'm Deepak, co-founder of Quizizz.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. And if the product you're building is an idea whose time has come, then what you really need to get right is your product market fit. Product market fit is the state in which a startup's product is so powerfully useful for the market that the viral adoption loop kicks in. And this episode is a masterclass in product market fit. Quizizz is the most unique edtech startup out of India. It does not have a large sales team responsible for acquiring users. It does not spend money on Google and Facebook ads, and it does not pay any celebrities to promote it. But it's a product with massive global adoption. It's one of the most popular tools for teachers to make their classes more interactive and fun. Deepak Cheenath, the co-founder of Quizizz, talks to your host Akshay Dutt in this episode of the Founder Thesis podcast about his journey of finding product market fit and then scaling up through a product-led growth strategy. Stay tuned and subscribe to the Founder Thesis podcast on any audio streaming app to hear about the many paths to discovering product market fit.
So I was born in Ahmedabad in Gujarat. So my dad was in the government. He was an IAS officer and based
Wow.
out of Gujarat. Growing up, I actually moved around quite a bit between like Gujarat and Delhi. My father even went to the US for 5 years. So I did some of my schooling there. Then I was in boarding schools from the ninth onwards. So I was really hopping around a lot as a kid, barely spent more than a few years in any one place. But I think you over the 11th and 12th, even just doing computer science in school, you have your little projects, the library management app and all of that. I think I really enjoyed that stuff. And I actually built like website of my own, just my personal website, deepakjoy.com, and still doesn't have much but programming. And so by the time I was getting into college, I'd actually kind of decided I wanted to get into that line of engineering, which I think was good. Otherwise, I may have just done the normal thing, go to the best college you have and take whatever branch you get. So that I think helped.
Okay. And so you joined Bits, and that's where you met your co-founder Ankit also.
Yes. So we actually, again, it was fate, I guess, that they randomly just paired two kids and me and Ankit were paired together. We are from very different backgrounds and everything.
Paired in a project or like as roommates?
No, in as roommates, yeah.
Okay.
So, and we actually often that's not with somebody else of the same branch, but as chance would have it, we were on the same branch too. So even second, third, fourth year, we were together because after that you stick with your branch. So we became really good friends then during college. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay. So what next then once you like graduated from Bits?
I think we both had some interesting journeys. But during college, I think both of us had done a lot of these little projects, whether it was for the college or just for our own entertainment. But after that, it came time for placement, just like everybody else. I think we were looking for a good salary, nice company, interesting work. And so I ended up at Amazon as a software engineer. And Ankit joined this company called Opera Solutions, which was a kind of a
Browser.
business. No, not the browser company, actually. So this is a different company, which was into business analytics and big data sort of analysis. And so he was a kind of a data researcher there. And then he, in fact, an interesting part of Ankit's journey before we got out of college, he actually interned at Flipkart. He was one of the very early folks there when they were just maybe 40, 50 people. He did like 6 months. So after working a little over a year, I think at Opera, he joined one of our batchmates who was doing this startup of their own. And so he did that for around a year before we ultimately started up together.
This you're talking of Wizen World.
So Wizen World was what we did after that. Yeah.
So tell me about the journey of jumping into entrepreneurship, like leaving that comfort of a job and starting that journey. Tell me about that. How did that happen? Like What's the story there? Like,
So, I mean, I think one good thing was the job itself wasn't that comfortable. I think Amazon
mm,
really makes you
mm,
slog. And
okay.
so, though I enjoyed it, I had no
Mm,
complaints about it. And
mm,
in fact, I think that's what got me thinking that if I'm working this hard anyway, why not think of doing something on my own? I had
mm,
actually tried a few things on my own on the side and during
mm,
even after joining Amazon, and I realized I just wasn't able to do justice. You might as well not do it. So I think I was sort of in that state of mind when Ankit reached out and we started talking about maybe doing something together. We'd done these projects even in college, and I think we
mm,
both felt like this is as good a time as any
mm,
because before we invest a lot into our careers and all of that,
mm,
why not give it
mm,
a try now? I think a lot of people wonder or ask us like, how did you take such a big risk? But I feel
mm,
like that was the least risky thing to do at that
yeah.
time because what do you
Right.
have to
Mm,
lose? And
mm,
the worst happens, it all goes down the drain. You come back
mm,
a year or two later with this great experience under your belt, and
mm,
you'll probably pick up right where you would have been had you just stayed in the corporate job even. So I didn't really
mm,
see it as a risk as such. And I think we had this mindset that if it's not working out, we'll just drop it. We can always
right.
come back to our
Mm,
jobs. We had that confidence at
mm,
least that we can clear
mhm.
an
Yeah,
interview.
that bit stack was like a safety net.
I think, yeah, that helped. Yeah.
So what was I mean, what did you want to do?
Yeah. So I think, yeah, how this idea itself came about, we were actually thinking about different types of ideas. To be honest, it wasn't that we had decided upon education as the only thing. So we actually spent a couple of months before we actually took the plunge and quit our job, just brainstorming on ideas, not building anything.
Mm,
And we touched upon finance and ticket booking and all the usual suspects. And ultimately, I think at that time I was also volunteering as a teacher, and I got to see the technology available to teachers to work with their students, and it
mm,
was very uninspiring to say the
mm,
least.
mm, mm.
Right? I think we've all seen
You were in like a Teach for India, like a formal
not a formal thing, just
volunteering program, or just like okay,
yeah, it was this thing called Youth for Seva, where I
okay,
would just go
okay.
occasionally. It wasn't like
Mm,
full
mm, mm,
as
mm, mm,
serious as like a full Teach for India fellowship. But I went for a few, and I think that gave me this idea, the seed maybe. And then
mm,
I discussed with Ankit, and he was also pretty excited. I think it seemed like this really interesting problem to work on, and
mm,
also an underserved market. Like at that time,
mm,
there were great things being built. There was
mm,
YouTube and social
mm,
media and all kinds of other email, these great tools, but we didn't see
mm,
that level of polish in the education domain. So we thought
mm,
even we could probably build something that'll be useful to people.
mm,
And that's, it got started. I think we were just excited about this space in general. And without anything more, I think we decided to just take the plunge. We put in our papers and decided to shift to Bangalore. So Ankit
mm,
at that time was in Delhi. I was in Hyderabad. So we both
mm,
sort of shifted into my brother's spare room in Bangalore,
mm, mm.
and eventually in a few weeks colonized the living room also.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that became our office for well
Mm,
over a year, I guess.
mm,
And yeah, I think like one of the smart things I think in retrospect that we did was we started by finding a school that we could work with. So that
uh,
became sort of our initial phase of just discovery. Was every
mm,
week we would
mm,
go to the school and work with a small
mm,
group of students and a teacher and
mm,
start building things and just showing, right? And that's
mm,
actually
mm,
where
mm.
we sort of ended up building Wise in World and all of that. Yeah.
What did you discover in that period of that 1 year when you were doing the discovery? Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was for us at that time, 2 years out of college, we really didn't know anything
Mm,
about
mm,
much.
mm, mm,
And so I think what that really helped us with is just to get that feedback because
mm,
going every week and working with this very different type of audience. So the great thing about kids is they don't really hold back when it comes
mm,
to,
mm,
you
mm,
can just see the feedback on their face They're not really concerned too much about your feelings. So we started with this idea of building games. We thought that would be the best way to engage a student. And so we make these little mini games and show them to the students.
And this is for like 6 to 10 age group or something like that.
This was middle schoolers. So yeah, I'd say like, yeah,
Okay.
8 to 11, that kind of range.
Okay.
And so they were old enough that they could kind of articulate what they were thinking and all of that. And so actually we learned a lot of interesting things, which seem maybe obvious, but that we made these very simple games and then we started elevating to more complex thinking it is going to really level up the experience. But then we found sometimes kids would not at all engage with those more complicated things. It was too complicated. So there's value of keeping things simple. How long, somebody like ultimately learning something is a hard process and nothing can take away from that. But I think what we realized is we are making that experience a little more digestible, a little more entertaining and rewarding, breaking it into chunks that make it a little less painful. So that's really what we discovered.
Was it like a story in which there are questions coming in the middle, like something like that?
It was kind of that, yeah. Like you would start, we'd made this that's actually out there on YouTube, the intro video, really quite bad, made on PowerPoint plus background track. But yeah, the real idea was that we wanted to make this immersive, this real epic story where you would, as you went through it, you would have to apply yourself to learn these new concepts, solve questions, and move through it. Ultimately, of course, building something like that is no easy task for two guys who've never done it before. So what ended up being built was this progression of levels where you would solve problems essentially to progress, and each level had a theme and all of that. But that story part was something we were still trying to get into it, and we never did really. Yeah.
You would need like graphic design, animation, all of those skill sets, which among the two of you didn't really have to.
Yeah. And
at that stage.
So we cobbled things together using free resources and all of that. Yeah, but yeah, we didn't even have money to pay anybody. Literally, we were running on our savings from our short stints at working. Yeah.
So you built like a test or an assessment kind of a product, like.
So you could say it was a practice product where students could pick a topic and sort of play this game that helped them solve questions, and there were hints and things like that. And so I think in those early days, because also how we sort of built it, but even as soon as we put the link out there, I think we realized that this is something that teachers were going to use with their students, though that wasn't something we knew before launch. But as soon as we looked at the analytics, we would see, like 25 people pop up in one place, and we knew it's like a teacher and students.
A teacher is using it in school. Okay.
And it started picking up in the US, in these other countries where they had that sort of infrastructure. And yeah, so.
Were your topics like global topics on which you had the tests?
Yeah, definitely global, like maths. It was all math.
Like simple, like arithmetic and reading and okay.
Yeah. So you could say, yeah, from like third, fourth to seventh, eighth, smattering of popular topics. Yeah.
Okay. And this was like a web app which you started, and you called it Quizizz, or like what did you call it?
No, so this was called Wizen World. So this was around 2013 June was when we quit our jobs and started, and till around the end of 2014 we worked on Wizen World, which was this math learning game kind of thing where we were making the content and creating these game levels and all of that ourselves.
Oh, it was only focused on math.
Only on math, yeah.
Got it. Okay, so then what? Like, how did Wizen become Quizizz?
Yeah, so that was around during this journey. We also got into this accelerator program, GSF India. And there we got this opportunity to pitch our product to a lot of investors. And I think the great thing about that program was we just really were forced to do a lot of pitches to a lot of VCs and get a lot of rejections. So I think it helped us refine that pitch. But we also, towards the end of it, we realized this product is not clicking with investors. We were quite happy with our pitch by that time, but just the scale of it, and we were personally struggling with just keeping up with the content demands because users were actually engaging and enjoying the product. We had, I think, around towards the end, hit maybe 45,000 registered users. teachers and students. But they would drop off in a couple of weeks or a month because that was all the content we had. And so creating, and this was, yeah.
And there was a monetization?
No, it was completely free as well. So there was no monetization either. And so we couldn't even pump in money or anything to churn out more. And also, I mean, it was more than just creating questions. You had to create this game experience and all of that.
Yeah, you have to build in those hints and like all the
Yeah.
the interactive layer on top of that set of questions.
Exactly. So we were really struggling with kind of churning out content. And we also kept hearing from students that they wanted to play with their friends. They wanted to be multiplayer, which Wise in World wasn't. It was the single player experience. So we were at this crossroads pretty much where we weren't really getting to where we wanted to be on Wise in World. And so we could have either thrown in the towel, as they say at that time, or we thought we were excited about exploring this idea though, right? Can we make something multiplayer that also is crowdsourced, opens it up for teachers to sort of fill in the content? And that's where really quizzes was literally the simplest way we could achieve those two things, because we wanted to do it in Wise and World, but to make a system where teachers can kind of build that themselves would have been a lot of work, right? So we thought, okay, let's make this simple quiz game, make it fun and competitive. We know how to build a nice experience there, and let teachers put in the questions, and we'll make it just engaging and leverage this multiplayer dynamic. And we, I think, built it in like a month or a month and a half and put out, as opposed to Wise in World, where we worked on it for 6 months plus before we even put out anything. I think more than 9 months probably. And we had really built out the whole experience. With quizzes, we made this really bare bones thing, which though had something useful like this fun quiz experience that's multiplayer, and where students can do the questions at their own pace. And that was something that wasn't really available at the time, like a student-based multiplayer quiz. Most of the things that were out there had it go one question for the whole class at the same time. And by then we knew a little bit about how to get the early word out, like to how we can get to at least a few thousand teachers. We had all these forums and we built some friends among teachers. So we just put it out to them. In fact, we actually didn't even leverage the Wise in World audience because we were like, let's not ruin Wise in World. We've got something good there. This quizzes thing may or may not really take off. So let's try it out as this separate experiment. But yeah, the interesting thing was a couple of months into it, we could just see the trajectory being so different. The users were a lot more sticky. We had removed the shackles that you can only use this for the content we've made. So teachers just dived in, started making their own content, and they just made it their own platform. And I think that's what unlocked our growth. I think within 2 months, we had surpassed whatever numbers we had on Wise in World in a year and a half, right? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I want to like zoom in on a couple of things. Did you raise funds from GSF then? Like you joined the GSF accelerator?
So GSF happened in the middle of or early part of 2014, and we did get a little funding there, but that was again maybe enough to just pay us a meager salary. After we launched Quizzes, we actually got back to our investors who we had pitched Wise in World to, and
Through GSF.
we had got in touch with these investors through GSF. So, and then we just had to reach out to them again. And so then Prime Ventures, which was our first real investor, they had seen us during Wise in World and they liked what we were doing, but they weren't really seeing the growth that they were looking. But we had told them that we're going to build this multiplayer thing. And when we went back to them 3 months later and said, here, it's built and it's bigger than Wise in World and it's growing, I think they really appreciated that. And we pretty much got a term sheet within days, I think. Right? We just hired one person after we did that fundraise, around $500,000. And this one software engineer, Amin. So the three of us then were building it for the next 9 months before. So, and our kind of subsequent hire after 9 months was a recruiter who then helped us build out the rest of the team, because we realized by that time this is not really our strength. We need somebody to keep the gas on growing of the team.
I also want to zoom in on the product. Now, you said it was a quiz product. Was it like a Google Forms where there's a authoring interface where teachers can do the authoring and create the questions and the correct answers? And then there is a student interface where they have questions with, like, say, it could be multiple choice or fill in the blank or so on, like something like that?
Yeah, pretty much that. So the only thing so it is kind of like that forms interface for a teacher where they create the questions in this tool. And I think where it differs is when you actually share that with students. Forms and all of these things are a very independent experience. You get your form link, you fill it up, and you're done. Whereas in quizzes, you would do that together as a class. So everyone would join this game, the teacher would hit start, and then you would see a live leaderboard. And that was really the
Okay.
experience that clicked. Yeah.
Okay. So, like in Google Forms, it shows you a progress tracker, which is your solo progress tracker. In quizzes, it would show you like progress tracker of multiple people. And
Yeah, you would see your rank going up and down. You would, on the board, you could see what's happening and all of that. So teachers often had a projector. So that's when there was music and
okay.
animations and all of that.
Okay. And you gave teachers the ability to add hints and stuff like that and to make the learning.
So over time, yes, we added like the ability to add an explanation if somebody gets it wrong and add various types of questions. And these features that allow a student to redo a question perhaps and reattempt the whole quiz and all of that, so that for a teacher it sort of just happens automatically to an extent. Yeah.
Okay. And this was like, what was the monetization here? Like a freemium model that teachers could?
So we actually kept it completely free for the first 5 years since we launched quizzes.
Wow.
So we had a long journey of keeping it free. And I think we could sustain that because the growth was really tremendous. So I think investors saw that and were ready to back us. And we also had a very low burn. So we had this small team of, I told you, right, like for the first year, investors would actually tell us, like, why aren't you utilizing this money more effectively, which was a fair call out. And eventually also we grew to 10, 15 people who are still a very small team, mostly young folks straight out of college or 1 or 2 years experience. And so it was a very lean, low burn team. You were not spending on marketing or any of that stuff. So that became actually our growth lever, having this great free product that people would love to share and talk about.
And you initially got it kickstarted by like personally going on to various groups and forums of teachers and like spreading the word through more of those organic outreach efforts.
Yes, exactly. So that's how we got started because we didn't know anything else. So we thought, how do we get people to try this? Let's see where teachers hang out and post it there. And thankfully, there were these different forums where mostly US teachers would be engaging, and they were engaging on other platforms like Twitter and things like that. So we then started figuring those things out. We would go reach out to some of these influencers on Twitter, tech influencers. And I think one of the great things, especially in those days, was it was just this very close knit community. You could just reach out to somebody, even if they had like 100,000 followers, and say, want to check out this thing we're building. It's this free tool for teachers. And they would get on a call with you, and then they'd actually champion your product if they liked it. And I think in those early days, we really leaned into teacher feedback. We would be on chat support. We had this simple chat support widget, and 24/7 we were online. So in those initial days, I don't even know when I slept because I was so excited. We were working in the day, and at night, we were working from India, right? And the US would come in towards the evening, and we would just stay up and then sort of doze off somewhere in between that. That really helped us to actually figure out how to evolve the product because we had very little idea. We were not teachers. So, but we just listened to teachers and everything they said. We just tried to do it as soon as possible. I think that was our strength of building like a nice product experience and doing it quickly. Engineering, I think, has always been kind of our core strength at Quizzes. So we just leaned into that. Like we would be so desperate to retain that user that we'd be like, oh, this guy bothered to give us feedback. Let's build it quickly. And sometimes the same day we would email them back saying, hey, now what you asked for is there, or that problem you had is fixed now.
Yeah, give me examples of this evolution journey. Like, what were some of those things which you learned that we need to incorporate these features? And
Yeah, there were so many, all kinds of little things. I remember we used to let students, teachers set the time,
Mm,
and we had up to like from 5 seconds to 5 minutes. And this one teacher said, "Can you add a bigger, a longer time option, like 15 minutes?" And
mm,
we thought, like, for
mm,
an MCQ question and this multiplayer experience, 15 minutes is a crazy amount of time. But we were like, fine,
mm,
what do we lose? We just add an
mm,
option.
mm,
And
mm,
interestingly, after that, we started seeing people say that you can use quizzes for long form questions. If you
mm.
want to do like
Okay.
a deeper sort of a quiz, you can use this platform. So
Mm,
all these sort of little things.
mm,
I remember in our initial 3, 4 years, the most popular tweet that we had was that we
mm,
had this feature to print a quiz where you
mm,
could basically print it as a PDF, the content. And that was the whole point of quizzes is so that you don't have to do that. But
yeah.
teachers, so we never thought about that feature. But a bunch of teachers said, please add the answer sheet, the answer key to that list of questions.
Okay.
And so we added that little thing and
Mm.
it became our most popular tweet.
Why is that? Like, what?
Yeah, so now the thing is, that's the thing when you, I think, just listen to users.
Mm,
What we realized later was that wasn't that teachers were just printing out quizzes and giving to their students, was that they would do an activity with their class, but two
mm.
kids would not be there.
Okay.
They would be at home or something, and
Mm,
they wanted to give them the same quiz, and they didn't want to
right.
make a separate game for them. That just felt,
Mm,
though they
mm,
could do that,
mm,
they could just make another
mm,
game, two
mm,
clicks, and send it
mm,
to those
mm,
kids. But they felt like, okay, these kids were left out, so I need to give them a
mm,
printout. That
mm,
was their way of
mm,
thinking. And so
mm.
we just solved for that, right? Yeah.
So that quiz became study material in a way, basically.
Yeah, it became like
Mm.
a makeup assignment for them.
Fascinating. Does the checking happen automatically? Like you can only do like limited type of questions which are easy to check, or can you also do like questions where people can write a full sentence? Because the moment you go into writing full sentence, then that's not something which can be automatically checked. Like,
So that still remains like a limitation of quizzes. That largely you
mm,
can only do objective type of questions, but we've tried
mm,
to
mm.
at least add variety in that where you can do match the columns or you can do a fill in the
Okay.
blank or a drag and drop
Mm, mm.
or drawing type of
Okay.
questions. And there are certain
Mm,
questions where we just can't evaluate. So the teacher, like by
mm,
default,
mm.
like we let the teacher grade those manually. But I
Okay.
think that's one area where we are, looking into.
In that case, the leaderboard and all will not be real time if the teacher has to evaluate manually.
Yes. So in those, so typically what we see is there'll be a couple of those questions in a quiz, but not
Mm,
the entire quiz of that kind. And though we
mm,
also do
mm,
see where teachers have the whole quiz that way, and then usually
mm.
they're not using it in that competitive way. So teachers could
Right,
actually turn off
right,
the
right.
leaderboard and those sort of things. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There it's a more serious, like a what we used to have in our school days, like a class quiz and we used to have every Monday used to be a quiz day or like a test, is some Monday test kind of a thing we used to have. Yeah. And what kind of traction were you seeing? Like, what was the peak traction which you saw at Wizen World? And
Mm.
then tell me, like, quizzes, what kind of traction did you?
So I remember like in after a couple of months of launch, I think 2 months or so, we hit this milestone of 1 million questions solved on quizzes, right? It was way more than
Mm,
what we had done on Wise and World. And
mm, mm,
like today, I could say that we end up doing that within like a couple of minutes.
mm,
So
mm, mm,
that
mm,
is sort of the progression we've seen over the years. But if I talk about like 2015, we hit roughly like 100K users. Then in 2016, we kind of really, in terms of percentage, we grew more than 10x to around like
Wow.
1 to 2 million monthly active. Then
Mm,
the next year, we went to 5, 6 million, then
mm,
10 million in
mm,
2018. So it was sort of,
mm,
in a way, it is very gradual growth. I would say
mm,
people tend to look at where you are now, but it took us
mm,
like
mm,
5 years to really get to like 20, 25 million active users. So it was this very gradual growth where every month we would just grow a little,
mm, mm,
but
mm.
steadily growing.
Okay. So today you are at 25 million MAU.
So now we are at actually over around 70 million MAUs. Yeah.
70 million. Wow. Amazing. Amazing.
So then after the initial 5 years, we've now had 2 more years since we started monetizing and all of that. And that also coincided with the pandemic and everything. So very interesting, very different 2 years for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, in your users, the student is also a user?
Yes. Yeah. When I talk about these users, I'm talking about students as well. Yeah.
Students plus teachers. Okay. So students have their own login where they can see the history of scores, like their journey they can see over there, like something like that.
They can see their history and things like that. Though what we've seen is students don't want to sit and analyze that a lot because largely it's guided by the teacher, and see most of the engagement is driven by a teacher assigning it either in class or as a homework assignment, that kind of thing. So
Okay. So in case of homework assignment, it will not be like start stop by teacher, but teacher will say that over the next 24 hours you have to complete this, something like that.
they can set some timeline, or even just keep, some teachers have a list of 20 quizzes which their students can come anytime and play. So
Okay.
quizzes that way. Now over the years we've really tried to solve for a lot of different ways in which teachers can use this platform, and but we still try to keep.
Got it. So yeah, let's talk about monetization. So when did you decide you want to monetize? You were at what number of MAUs when you decided to monetize? And which year was it?
Yes, I'd say we actually were starting to think about it from our kind of third, fourth year itself of operation. And by that point, we knew we had a sizable sort of, we were getting to be even one of the biggest in the world.
And so far, just that 500K from Prime was sustaining you? $500K fundraise.
No, so in 2018, we also raised another 3 million from Nexus Venture Partners.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so, yeah, but we did have another fundraising between, but this was all way before we started monetizing. But we did have that solid growth already going. What I think, so after that next fundraise, right, from Nexus, that's when we started really thinking about it. And what we were actually hoping to do was to not charge teachers at that time. We knew that teachers add so much value to our platform. They're creating. So one of the things we didn't talk about, just that all the content is created by, and we did talk about that it's all created by teachers. So that really is what has allowed quizzes to be used in so many different countries and for all types of subjects. In fact, we have right from school teachers to bank employees and Fortune 500 company users and casual people just doing a pub quiz, just because it's this flexible tool. We tried ad-based monetization. We had this huge user base, but pretty soon we realized that's not something we wanted to do, just because the audience we were working with, students and teachers. So we pivoted away from that. We tried actually building experiences for students. Like, we thought if we could get even one student in a classroom to pay, they have essentially the same paying capacity as a teacher, the parent of the student. So that could be this great monetization. But I don't think we were ready for that, because we didn't have parents on our platform engaging at that time, especially. So then we took that as a learning. We tried premium content which students could pay for. We tried these more fancy power-ups that wouldn't allow you to win, but just allowed you to create like a moment in the class, like draw attention to yourself or just create this fun moment for everybody. Again, we saw good engagement on those sort of things, but the willingness to pay wasn't there, because I think ultimately, if a student has $10, they're going to spend it on some actual game or some chocolate or whatever than this platform that their teacher is using. In fact, so when we launched our paid product, we didn't take anything away from the free experience. We just added some new functionality, a couple of things which we knew teachers wanted, which we hadn't been able to build, which took some heavy investment. So we kind of built those over a couple of months, packaged this thing, set a pretty much like a round number, $5 a month as the price point, and just put it out there. And I think we were thrilled to see that a lot of teachers just picked that up. They started paying out of their own pocket because they just enjoyed using quizzes, I think. And this was something within their price range. And so we pretty much became profitable overnight as soon as we launched that. There was also this pent up demand and all of that. So I think that was when we became a sustainable company.
COVID must have like really given you wings, because the need for tools which allow you to do remote learning, remote teaching rather, like must have exploded.
Yes, for sure. And though we were actually not building that, we were building for teachers and students to engage online, but it was mostly
Hmm.
happening in the classroom. But again, I think just because we always had that engineering hat on, we always built it like, oh, it should also work if they're remote and what if there's
Hmm.
one kid at
Hmm.
home and all that.
Hmm.
So we had built everything to work well in this remote setting. And I think when the pandemic happened, all of a sudden, like teachers just found like there's this great platform that's I can largely use even for free. And we saw this amazing growth. And I think even a great growth in our revenue as well, because those additional features were also quite valuable to teachers. Yeah.
And like, did you have to build special stuff once COVID hit, or like how did COVID impact the way your business was running?
Luckily, we were able to keep the site running. That didn't become an issue. We literally in countries, we grew like 10x overnight, like
Wow.
literally overnight, where they would announce a lockdown and the next day, and over a period of like a month where all the lockdowns happened globally, we just had this huge surge. Like I remember India 2019 to 2020 was 30x growth for us.
Like you had built it in a way that it was scalable, like easily scalable.
Right, we built it all on like cloud
Mm.
services like AWS, Google Cloud, and all that, so that we were able to scale up pretty easily.
And what did you include in the premium plan? What were those extra things that people paid for?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It was actually really, it wasn't about powerful new features. It was, and like we didn't know that at the time. So we had a mix of those. Like we had the ability to add video and audio. We had,
Like the question could be a video question. The teacher could be
yeah,
speaking out the question, and so it would make it more engaging, especially if you're doing remotely.
yep. And especially like for language learning and those sort of things, audio becomes big. The ability to even have the student speak out
Submit
audio,
audio.
yeah,
Okay.
or video. And then just I think, yeah, it was around these new types of questions that you could create, and just the ability to say keep an assignment open for longer and things and little things like if your assignment runs out, then being able to reopen that for say some students who were late. So eventually even, yeah, access to our full library of content, things like that. It ultimately, we realized that teachers wanted to save time, they wanted convenience. So things that gave them that really worked well. So if I don't have to send out a new assignment every 2 weeks, because that was a limit we had, the length of the assignment. So they would pay for that. Or if I just find this really great quiz, teachers would pay to get access to our full library so that they can save that kind of time. And so some things around bulk at grading questions, things like that is what sort of eventually made it into it. But I'd say in the early days, there were just a few features.
How did you create this library of quizzes that teachers could just like use as templates?
So we actually didn't create it at all. It was made by our users. So what we really focused on was giving them those really easy, intuitive tools to create this interesting content and building that interface to create this varied content. So different question types or adding an explanation or and a lot of the details in that, right? Like a lot of the popular platforms in those days had a limit for the length of the question. Let's say it would be 250 characters or something. We would say just put it as long as you want, and we the other side of the interface that would automatically resize the text and maybe add a scroll bar if needed. So we really went deep into solving these, I mean, seem like small problems, but not really. If you have to give a 500 character question and that is beyond the limit, you're really stuck, that becomes a blocker for a, say, English comprehension question. So those were the things. And so then what were the workarounds? They would take a photo of that passage and upload it. But that's not nice to read and render well across mobile and desktop. And now you can't read that out. So we had a feature that would say use the browser's read aloud functionality. All that will fit in if this whole thing worked, right? What we were really doing is leveraging technology in the most effective way to solve these problems. Yeah.
So these quizzes that were created by other users, so you like license them out so that you can offer it to the rest of the, or like how did that library of content, like how did that?
You could think of it like YouTube, where all these creators come on the platform and upload their stuff for the. So as a teacher, you had an option to keep it.
For their audience, basically.
Yeah, you could keep it private like you can on YouTube for yourself,
Okay.
or
Right.
you can and give access to your students and things, or you can just put it out there for the world to leverage. And
Okay.
teachers would do that because they were also saving so much time utilizing the content made by others, right?
Others.
So
Percentage conversion do you see out of free users getting converted into paid users? And you have a very large base, so I'm sure this will be a small
yeah.
number, but
So, see, if I talk about globally, it's really small number. I'd say in the US, where we've has been our mainstay for a long time, we have a really healthy percentage there. So, in this 5 to 10% range of our users
wow,
end up
amazing.
upgrading in the US, and so there we have a really good product market fit. Yeah.
And globally, what is the number?
So that's something, I mean, I honestly don't even know the exact
Sub
number,
5.
but it would be very low. So in fact, in countries like India and Southeast Asia, we're pretty early. And here, actually, the main difference is that in these countries, that decision to purchase is usually not a teacher paying out of their own pocket. It's usually the school,
Okay.
and we don't even have the sales set up right now to capture a lot of that. It's a lot of on the ground selling, which we need
Right.
to still figure out. Like in the US, we do have that aspect. So even our aim is increasingly how can we get the school or the organization to pay rather than the teachers themselves. And
Right.
so we offer them like a refund if their school upgrades or those sort of things as well.
So that way the teacher becomes your salesperson then, because she will get a refund. That's amazing. Okay.
That is exactly what we would hope for.
So you have like a offline sales team in the US, like which does these conversations with school administrators and so on.
Yes, we have a team in the US and a team in India where because we get the majority of our leads are actually inbound. So a lot of people just coming to our website and filling up our form.
And what is the kind of revenue you do now? Like what's your ARR currently, or what do you expect you will end this year at, and what is your number of paying users currently? Like are you between 10 million and 50 million ARR? Like just that range? That's a very wide range.
Yeah, I think you could say, yeah, you could put us in that bracket, sure.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Amazing. Okay. So, do you consciously follow this strategy known as PLG, product led growth? So, what is PLG? Can you do like a PLG 101 for our listeners?
Sure, yeah. So I'd say, at least what I understand of it, is where you leverage your product to drive your growth. You don't try to grow it through inorganic performance marketing and all of that.
And like what you have never spent on performance marketing. Like,
Yeah, we've never spent a penny on any of that. Yeah.
so, for founders who want to use this kind of an approach of product led growth, not spend on performance marketing, what's your advice to them? Like, do you
Sure.
have some broad principles you can share?
Yeah. So one, I would say the most important thing is it's not really a hack at all, but care about your users, I think. And that will reflect in everything you do. So I think that is one thing because the people who end up using you in those early days, I'm sure you'll find somebody through forums and those few dozen, few hundred early users. They are people who are early adopters, will try something just because it's good and they're curious. And if you engage with those people, they'll become real champions for you, right? Keep the other, I would say, is try to reduce the friction in your onboarding experience. So, like, if I talk about what's little even different today, when you're in the early stages, nobody knows who you are, what your product does. It probably doesn't even do it that well. So, to make somebody fill up a big form and what is your role and this and that is really overkill. And you should. So, one of the things we did in early days was you could use the whole platform without getting any login prompt even. The teacher could do a whole class game without even signing up. They just found a quiz, start the game. Kids would get a game code. You just join with that and you get your report, which you can download. And so we really just try to eliminate the friction. And then sort of once they've got that value, we say, hey, why don't you log in? This report will get stored to your account.
You told me that you also fixed your onboarding experience once pandemic hit. Like, what did you fix?
So I think a lot of it was just, I mean, we did a lot of experiments to just layout of the landing page, right? Things around, there were core parts of our flow where once you essentially sign up and then you search for a quiz. There you just the CTAs on that page, things like that, and some parts around classroom creation and those sort of things.
Okay.
Certain
Okay. Coming back to PLG, any other principles? Your one was purely word of mouth. Like, no, there was no incentive for people to, like, there was no incentive led viral strategy.
Yeah, there was no incentive. Yeah. I think one thing I could say though, which again is a little hard to achieve, but create that inspiring moment for a user, something which they like to share. So that
Oh,
if you don't have that incentive, like how we achieved that, this was a little feature we had from the very first release. After every question, you would have this funny meme that would pop up. It was just
okay.
a random, like a funny image, which just, if you got it, it would be something about that. If you got it wrong, it would be some joke around, it's okay
Okay.
that you got it wrong, or just making light of it. I remember, like in MailChimp, when you would have to send out your, like, MailChimp is like an email campaign tool. And so they would have this monkey mascot. And so when you would have to send out your campaign, it's always this moment of slight nervousness. Did I get it all correct? And so they would have this animation of this finger sort of shivering over this red button. And so it's,
Okay, making your product a little quirky.
and it depends on your industry, but I think definitely.
Yeah. What about starting your revenue flywheel? Any advice on that? Like, what is the stage at which you monetize a user? Like, after how many days of signing up, or is there a milestone after which you feel, yes, this is high likelihood of conversion? And how do you push them? Is it like gentle nudge, or what is it like?
Yeah, I think, I mean, honestly, I'd say I don't think we are the best at that, right? We took a lot longer probably than we should have to monetize. What we've seen working is, like, once you've launched your monetization plan, I think it's definitely a bit of a gamble. You take a bet on something that you think will, and to figure that out, we had 5 years of feedback, people asking for features and things like that. I think we knew there were these 3-4 things that they want, that we had then decided these are the top requests. We'll put these into the paid plan. And I mean, not just the top requests, like a lot of the top requests we put for free also, but some which were heavy investments for us, or we felt were very differentiated features or hard to build and sustain. So those sort of things went into the paid plan. But ultimately, I think that, of course, what is tough for you to build isn't necessarily what the user wants to pay for, but really just keep looking at what's working. So we had a lot of learnings in that journey as well. We realized that a lot of these powerful features were not things teachers wanted to pay for, because that's still more work for them. If I give you a more fancy type of question that you can create, it's probably more work to make that type of question also. And that we realize not necessarily something people are really excited about.
Do you get an SEO benefit? Like, so you said you are like a YouTube of quizzes, where there are these creators who are essentially like education creators, you can say, who create these quizzes. And so does that give you like a benefit in traffic?
We show up for like millions of Google queries for all types of content. Again, that became a great thing for us, because it was, again, our users who were doing this for us. So they would create probably the questions they needed, which chances are other people also need. So the questions, the title of the thing, and now we have actually gone beyond just quizzes as well, where teachers can create lessons or more instructional content. So all of this is now kind of showing up on Google, and it becomes a huge source of new users. So I'd say, like, especially outside the US, a lot of our growth came from SEO, people either searching for a quiz platform or an online teaching platform, and then also searching for the content itself, which is a huge part of the traffic that comes in.
Okay. So tell me about this. Like, are you now pivoting into becoming an LMS, like a learning management system, from just a quizzing platform?
So, not a learning management system. What we want to really focus on is the learning journey itself.
Okay.
So, I would say one is just building out these interactive experiences. Like, we want to be the tool that integrates with your LMS, but that you actually use for learning, for teaching, for practice, for homework, for assessment, and for checking the pulse, all of that. We want to own that teacher student engagement around learning. I think what we are building for, that a lot of other companies aren't doing, is for that classroom experience, like or that classroom environment, students and teachers, whether it's physically in the classroom or at home or remotely and all of that. But solving for that, really making that teacher student interaction more meaningful and delightful.
So you're not building a video, like a pre-recorded video lesson tool, but you're building an interactive video class tool essentially.
So, in fact, we don't even do the whole video part. That they still use Zoom or whatever they use, but we are building the engagement tools that work with all of this. So,
Okay, so while on the Zoom call, there can be a link which is shared with everybody and which can open up a whiteboard for them, and you can
yeah.
have all of these interactive features. Got it.
So you can have like a lesson where the teacher is going through slides, then pops up a question. So like again, usually teaching becomes this one-way broadcast. Usually just zone out after a point. So now the teacher can ask a question. We have these fun feature where they can just spin a wheel and pick the next student who gets to answer a question. So all of these just add some level of just wake kids up by keeping them engaging with that experience.
So instead of using PowerPoint to project, you use Quizizz to project. Like you can upload your presentation on Quizizz and project that and intersperse it with the interactive.
All these interactive tools, yeah.
So you have like a authoring tool for creating these slides.
Yeah. So we have that authoring tool, or you can even import from your existing slides. And so really what we are not trying to innovate on being the best slide creation tool. There are great tools out there, like use them and then, but you can import and then make it interactive is what we are really trying to do.
Do you do stuff for community building, allowing people to comment and like and all of that? Like the typical social media techniques, like what social media does?
One of the challenges is just the whole safety issue that ultimately when you're working with students, you have to be a little careful about. So we do a lot of automated checks and on our content that's created to make sure that nothing inappropriate comes in. And so there can be a lot of negativity also and the thing is it just takes one bad actor, somebody who criticizes the creator of a quiz or that sort of thing. So we want to be a little careful about opening up that can of worms.
Commenting is a double-edged sword. Like it could backfire. So you don't want to risk that. The sign-up process for teachers and students is different. Like they have a different onboarding flow.
Yeah, there is a different experience there. And in fact, they don't even need to sign up. So again, we've always tried to keep.
You can just put the name and start.
Yeah, just put their name and get in. Or put any name really.
So like your homepage right now is not really like a YouTube kind of an approach, but it's more to get teachers to sign up instead of having a homepage which directly shows you quizzes of teachers. Why did you take that call? Like,
so, I mean, what we've seen is that if we just directly drop them on to, I mean, as soon as you sign up, that's actually what you land on, right? Something like the YouTube homepage. But before that, it's quite a lot to figure out on your own, like that this is a platform to engage a group of students and all of that. So that's kind of why we've gone with this approach.
Plus, this approach would give you better conversion rates in the long run.
We've seen that. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Amazing. So, and you just had a pretty big fundraise last year. Tell me about that.
Oh, sure. I think one of the things we had not done a good job is growing the team during this journey. We kind of, in our first year and a half, we got to a certain size. And then pretty much with that team, we built sort of, it grew a little, of course, but like 2-3 people every year sort of a growth. And what now we ended up having to do is all of a sudden, as soon as we monetized, we were making relatively a lot of money. So we could easily justify a much larger team.
But why did you need to raise? You raised like 30 million from like Tiger Global, among others, 31.5 million, I believe. So what was the need to raise this round? Like, because you were making money anyway, like.
So I think we felt that this was like one thing, just if I'm being very honest, is that when you're that small of a company and nobody has heard of you, you need some validation. It definitely helps with building that brand. And also that we do have, I think we need to get better at maybe thinking about growth more systematically and how do we grow more aggressively, sort of put fuel into some of these fires that are going. And that's where I think I said that we have never spent on paid marketing, but it's not that I have anything against doing that. We just didn't have any money to do it. But there are people.
Yeah, it was, you were forced to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's been a good learning for us, but it's not to say that tomorrow we won't look at effectively leveraging marketing.
So right now, US is your top market. After that, who else is there? Like, what are your?
So in terms of user base, I'd say Southeast Asia is the next big one for us. And so
Okay.
Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines, a lot of these, India as well. So this is an area where we've grown a lot. Also South America, like countries like Brazil, Colombia, Peru, even in Europe, we have a number of countries, Poland and Israel and others. So in fact, it's hard even for us to know why we work in certain countries and not in others, because we just see it thing happening, and then we try to further fuel that by supporting the language better and getting in touch with users there to understand. That's kind of big countries.
So, what's your advice to aspiring founders?
Yeah. So I think the one thing I would tell people is that it's really a journey, not a destination. And so you need to find ways to enjoy that journey. First of all, it starts with picking something that you're excited to build for whatever reason. We picked education not because we had a particular background in it, but it just felt like an interesting problem that we would love to work on. It turns out also that's a user base. That's a pleasure to work for. Teachers are great users to get feedback from. They'll promote you, they'll talk about you, and they don't want anything in return. So you will have to find those things in your journey that really drive you and motivate you, because without that, it's really hard to just keep it going day after day, because every day is not going to, or even every month or even a year might go by and you don't really achieve anything that is meaningful to anybody outside of yourself or your team. And so I think really just enjoy what you're doing and care about who you're doing it for. And I think with all startups, your real advantage is speed. That how quickly can you do that, and how can you do something that a team of 50 people can't do with three people who don't know much of anything. Right?
Amazing, amazing.